And I'm going to start the meeting because I really do not want to take up a lot of your time. First of all, let me just thank you so much for joining our meeting. Um, this particular meeting, I know you probably think it's very early in the semester to start talking about the geometry EOC, but I actually prefer to be a little bit proactive and make sure that I am including everyone early before they have to take it. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through the information that I have about the EOC, and then at the end of the session, I will open it up for any questions or concerns. If at any time you have a question for me and you want to just type it in the chat box, that will be great. And then I'll make sure to keep an eye on that and make sure that I'm able to answer everyone's questions. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Lisa Pizzuto, and today I am currently everybody's geometry and accelerated geometry teacher. I know Hawkins and Ho are both in accelerated geometry, so I will continue to be your teacher. We have someone who joined us on the phone, Corp Alpharetta, so I'm not sure who that's.
Yeah, this is John Ho.
Okay, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay. And then we have Haas, is that right? Let me just do a quick check here. Because then if it's going to be all accelerated, then I'll just focus my discussion there. But all right, so who is our last? I have a Haas, Joss guest. Do you want to tell me your student's name? If you could just either type the first name in the chat box or what course they're taking, whether it's geometry or accelerated geometry. Okay. So the reason I wanted to have this meeting early is because for those students that are taking accelerated geometry, some schools offer the option of taking it before the end of the semester, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. All right, who takes the geometry EOC? If your student is currently taking either Geometry Semester B, which means second semester geometry, or you have a student who's in our accelerated program, so they are taking the Accelerated Geometry B / Algebra 2 Semester A, they also will take the EOC this semester. So if you are on this call and you received an email from me, it's because you have a student that is registered in one of these two courses. When do I take the geometry EOC? First of all, let me say I enjoy very much working with your students and working with them virtually. However, their home school is the one that kind of gets to dictate most of the rules. So the first thing is the time is going to be determined by your home school. That said, all of my accelerated students will be ready to take the EOC exam as soon as they finish the probability unit, which is the second or third unit they do on the virtual course. And we'll go through all of the topics that they'll be responsible for in a moment. My on-level geometry students are going to be ready once they are finished in May with the class, so that they don't take the regular on-level geometry student does not see the probability unit until the very end of the course. One of the things that is unique to Fulton County this year is they're letting students do what they call take the EOC mid-month. So if your student finishes the class early, then I will notify their home school, and if their home school chooses, they can actually go ahead and give them their EOC the next available time. Now, this is going to be a greater concern to my students who are taking the accelerated course. Once they're finished with the probability unit, they'll be ready to take the geometry EOC, because all of the units after the probability unit are based in Algebra 2 concepts. And I'll be communicating with both the students and the parents when that time arises, and also communicating with the student to see if they feel like they are ready to take it. Where do you take the exam? All virtual students will take their EOC geometry exam at their home school. So if you attend Ridgeview Middle School, then that's where you're going to take your EOC exam. If you attend Roswell High School, then that's where you would take your EOC exam. So it is the home school that does give the EOC exam. All right, what does the exam cover? Now this is a little difficult to see. I apologize for that on the slide. But I'm going to go over here what are the 6 main topics that the EOC does cover, and what are some of the things that you need to be familiar with. I'm also going to provide all of you with resources, one of which is a detailed list, which includes all of the things in this PowerPoint that discuss what the exam covers. Now, I bring this up because depending on when your student took the first part of geometry, and this really is going to fall into 2 categories. For my accelerated geometry students, you took the first part of geometry, so the first 4 topics of geometry, you actually took last year when you were in accelerated algebra. And in accelerated geometry, you cover the last 2 topics, which is kind of why you finish early. The Geometry B students, my on-level geometry students, if you took Geometry A last semester, then you've recently seen these topics. But if you're one of my students who maybe took geometry last year, then you would have seen those topics then. And we're going to talk about some strategies on how we can compensate for the fact that maybe you haven't seen all of these topics recently. So the first thing I want to do is just quickly kind of talk a little bit about what the topics are that are going to be covered on the exam. The first topic is triangles, and this is the student's first introduction to geometry. And it's basically broken down into 4 parts. I'm not going to read all of them to you. I'm just going to give you a general idea that's basic understanding of a triangle, triangle similarity, triangle congruence, and the introduction to right triangles, which is the basics for trigonometry. Quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals are your 4-sided figures, and it's broken down into 3 main topics: classification, construction and proofs, and then you do have formal proofs of both triangles and quadrilaterals. The next topic that's covered is circles. Circles, again, is broken down into segments. You have your basic understanding of circles, that includes the parts of the circle, angles within a circle, segments, and then you have your arc length, sector areas, and radians. These first three topics that I mentioned, triangles, quadrilaterals, and circles, would have been covered in the first semester of regular geometry. So for my accelerated students, these first three topics and the fourth topic that I'm about to introduce would have all been covered when you took accelerated algebra last year. The fourth topic, and this would be the first topic introduced for my Geometry B students, is volume. You talk about volume of all 5 solids as well as ratio of solids. That includes the ratio of the lengths, area, and volume. Then we get into some coordinate plane information. This has to deal with distance, slope, midpoint, transformations, as well as some coordinate proofs. The last unit covered in geometry is probability. I will be monitoring the accelerated geometry A students carefully. Once they are done with the probability unit, technically they are ready to take the EOC. Now, what I mean by that is that they've been exposed to all of the geometry topics in order to prepare them to take the EOC. So, how do you prepare? What are some resources? I'm going to provide each of the students, and I'll be sending this in a email to everyone this evening. Besides the list of topics, I'm going to also be including a PDF file that's called the Georgia Milestones Assessment Guide. Now, this is about a 34-page document. I don't expect students to print off the whole document. But the reason that I do include it, it has some excellent information about example test questions. It gives an idea of what type of calculator, if any, you can use on the exam, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It also gives you some great websites where you can do some additional practice. So you'll get 2 documents from me, one which is just a list of all the topics covered on the EOC, and the second one is going to be this large PDF, which is an assessment guide. The third document that you'll receive from me is a document on how to sign up for a site that's called the USA Test Prep. What I've done is in USA Test Prep, I've actually set up some practice tests for your students to take so that they can kind of help prepare themselves for the EOC. One thing that you want to keep in mind for all of your students is that the EOC covers all 6 units of geometry. So whether or not your student took those first 3 sections last year or last semester, they're still going to be held accountable for all 6 units. So rather than have them go into the EOC unprepared, I like to provide them with some resources to go back and look at those topics and kind of review those standards and be able to go ahead and ask some questions about those particular standards. The last thing I want to mention is that based on where the EOC is going to fall for the accelerated students, I will be offering a week's worth of nightly virtual sessions similar to this one where I will go spend each night going over one particular topic. So it might be triangles one night, circles a different night, volume a third night, etc. And in those sessions, I'll go over some example questions. I'll also review some of the important points that they might want to remember, like formulas or how to put things in a calculator, etc. The only thing I want to say about the calculator is this. Whether or not you can use a handheld calculator is actually up to your individual schools. I have gone ahead and requested from each of your home schools some guidance as to whether or not they're going to allow you to use a handheld calculator or not. I have only heard back from one school, North Springs, and they are only letting the students use the calculator that's actually on the computer system itself. And that is a school decision. That's not a Miss Pizzuto decision, unfortunately. Um, but as soon as I have that information, I will certainly share it with you. All right, so that's all I have. I know it's just a brief overview, but I also don't want to take up a ton of your time. But I would at this time really like to open it up to any questions that you may have. So please feel free to either unmute your mic or type a question in the chat box. And I would love to hear what some of your questions are.
Hi. So approximately when will these review sessions be?
The review sessions, they're actually going to happen in two waves. The accelerated students should probably be ready to take the exam towards the end of March or just after spring break. So towards the end of March, I'll be having those review sessions. But I will give all of the students as well as the parents a big heads up before I begin those.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Is there a final after the EOC, or is the EOC is a final?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Thank you so much. I apologize that I didn't mention that earlier. The EOC serves as the student's final exam. So the EOC counts for 20% of their grade. That's an excellent question. Thank you so much for reminding me.
Great. That's all I have.
Okay, awesome. Well, please know that I am always available via email, text. Feel free to give me a phone call. I did put my phone number over in the chat box, but hopefully all of you have my contact information from my emails and welcome letters, etc. I truly have enjoyed working with your students so far, and we're having a pretty good semester, so I'm excited to see how they do on this exam. I always feel like high stakes exams are a great way to show whether or not we've all done what we need to. Encourage your students to reach out. If you have any concerns about your student just in general taking an exam, make sure that you let me know that ahead of time so that I can help them become comfortable with the format, etc.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for coming, and
So,
again, please look for those that email with those resources.
thank you again.
Thank you. All
Great. Thank you.
right.
Bye.
Y'all have a good evening. Bye-bye.